Creating a memorable and multidimensional villain is essential to a well-crafted story. A well-crafted villain can really just enhance the emotional depth to your story and elevate your narrative to new heights unimaginable. So here's a step-by-step guide on how to write a compelling villain. Step 1. You have to recognize the role the villain plays within your story. They are the primary source of opposition that your characters are going to be facing. Consider Sauron in The Lord of the Rings, whose quest for power and domination sets the stage for the epic struggle. All three stories are all about defeating Sauron. So now that we understand the role of the villain, which is to give the most opposition out of any other struggle to your characters, we have to develop a backstory for your villain. See, while it worked when we were still kids, having a villain with not really any reason for being bad, in the time that we're in now, we need reasons. We need our readers to be able to identify with the struggles our villains face, but just simply show that the villain made wrong choices instead of the hero making good choices. Really, the hero and villain are the same, but the villain says, I went through so much pain, I'm going to give it to everyone else. But the hero says, I went through so much pain, I'm going to make sure no one else feels this pain. Both of them come from the same beginning. They both have a struggle. Think of like the Joker in Batman. His ambiguous past hints at a dramatic event contributing to his descent into chaos. You have to show the events, or at least know the events, so that you can better show your readers what made them what they are today. So now that we sort of have like a backstory as to like what happened to them that turned them this evil, we have to create motivation and goals for this character. Because really, some of these villains might even be the protagonist of a story if we was focused in on them instead of our actual protagonist. So really just keep that in mind, even if they are morally gray or evil. These goals should be clear, but of course some might be a hidden reason, allowing your readers to slowly uncover the secrets as they interact with your villain more and more. But as I said before, these motivations, whatever they are, should be rooted within the history of this character. Consider the character Lago from William Shakespeare. He's motivated by a combination of personal resentment and a desire for power, but even that desire for power must have stemmed from somewhere. Now, you don't have to tell your readers what these events were, but you have to at least have an understanding of how your character got to where he is now. And then that history will just simply overflow a little here and there onto the pages, and your readers will do just fine with their own imagination. Step 4 is to create complexity. Now, just like I was saying, the whole evil for the sake of being evil does not work anymore. You have to give your antagonist depth by exploring morally gray areas, internal conflicts, or moments of vulnerability. Magneto from the Marvel Comics is a perfect example of this, often opposing the X-Men, but motivated by a desire to protect mutant kind from persecution. So you'd say that he's bad from the X-Men point of view, but yet to the mutant kind, he's good. That morally gray sort of villain makes a very interesting story. It always adds a bit more intrigue to it when your good guys are trying to take down this villain, but really the villain has been doing good things. Your reader is going to become fairly twisted between who to truly root for in that case, creating more discussion about your book and therefore more reviews, more sales, and just more popularity for your story. Step 6 is to take into account some moral ambiguity. You can do this by presenting the villain's perspective in a way that challenges the reader's own beliefs or elicits empathy. Even if the reader doesn't agree with the antagonist's actions, they should understand the point of view. In Crime and Punishment, the character Raskolnikov, I think I'm pronouncing that right, he wrestles with his moral justification of committing murder. Now, obviously this villain, right? He himself kind of realizes that he's bad. But even that realization does not stop what happened. So he tries to wrestle with it and come to terms with it in his own way, trying to shine a good light to it. Now the readers are going to be caught up in this mess of a mind, testing their own morals as we go deeper into that story. Now, once we have all these different steps set up, right? We have the complexity, we have the backstory, ambiguity, we have all those parts. Now we can finally bring this villain into conflict with our hero or the protagonist. Now this happens a lot in like kids literature, like kids movies as well, where the villain is almost unstoppable. There's not really a flaw to them, except that they're a little wrong in their decisions. This is obviously not true for any villain. Villains are people too. It sounds like something I should put on a shirt or something. Villains are people too. But it's true. They all have flaws. They all make mistakes. They all have flaws and weaknesses. But these flaws can add layers to your character. Think of Macbeth from William Shakespeare. His ambition and susceptibility to manipulation ultimately led to his downfall. They might appear on the outside to be like this grave danger, but really they might be wrestling with themselves. They might actually be their greatest danger. No villain is invincible, and neither is your hero though, so just keep that in mind. Now that we know their flaws and weaknesses and the conflict that they have with your protagonist, a lot of villains are never really alone. They can find others who identify with their cause. So you have to explore the villain's relationships with other characters, including like henchmen, allies, or even personal connections. Right? Like we could have like this drug lord who has like a very loving family, but it's only at work when he does those evil things. These relationships can reveal different aspects to the character's personality and motivations. Say like Darth Vader in Star Wars. His relationship with Emperor Palpatine illustrates how alliances and power dynamics shape a villain's character. If Anakin wasn't friends with Palpatine, he would never have been Darth Vader. He would have just died on Mustafar. Actually, he might have not even made it there. He might have still been a hero if he never knew Palpatine. So really, characters or side characters, just like past events, can shape a villain or a hero. Also, another step here is the foil to the protagonist. Now, a lot of these villains, especially nowadays, you'll see them being just so much further ahead in power than your hero. But really, some foils, but really, some villains can and should be the same power level as your protagonist. This adds constant tension and almost like a race to the top of mastery for these two competing characters. This is what a foil is. It's like a relationship with equal characters working together, but a foil is equal characters working against each other. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of the conflicts in your story. The villain doesn't always have to be extremely the villain doesn't always have to be much more powerful than your protagonist. They can really be at the same power level, but constantly competing against each other. Now, a very important step here that you cannot miss is to use dialogue and actions to reveal the motivations of your villain. I know that we just talked about like the motivations, the backstory, all those things. Do not tell your reader that. You have to show them that through the actions and dialogue of your characters. Because say if you're just telling your reader all these like different things about their backstory, motivations, or who they are, but say if they're acting in a completely different light, it just wouldn't make sense. So why not just skip telling them about it and just simply show them exactly how they are? This is where having a villain perspective in some chapters can be really helpful. And now we also have to remember that just like the hero or the protagonist, all characters have some sort of character development, including your villain. Some of us have the villain as an idea of like this unstoppable force, or just like this specific end goal that can't really get any bigger or any smaller. Totally far from the truth. A villain is just like your hero, but they made a different choice. Remember when there was a traumatic event, the hero said, I'm not going to let this happen to anyone else. The villain said, I'm going to let this happen to other people. In fact, I'll force this upon them. So, since they aren't that different, they are both going to experience character development in which they both face pain and they both become better by it. Now, when I say better, I don't mean morally better, but like objectively better in their skills, in their talents, in their emotions, perhaps spiritually. All these different things. The villain will continue growing in power and moving further and further to darkness, while the hero will keep on growing in power and moving further and further to light. And then some will go from darkness back to light, say like Darth Vader, for example. He's like this ruthless warrior, but then finally seeks redemption and sacrifices himself for his son. This is a dramatic transition, but it happens over time from different experiences. So that's about it for this guide. Just one more thing, remember to keep them human, right? That we all have flaws, we all have troubles, we all have fears, all have pain. Your villain is no different. This is what makes a relatable villain. This is what makes an interesting villain. You can't have this like invincible wall of evil. You actually have to have flesh. You actually have to have something that can be defeated. You have to have something that allows for growth of itself and also all those around them, including your main character. Hopefully you enjoy this video. I'm right now open to introductory calls with all of you. If you are interested in a free coaching call with me, you can book a call down below following the link. We can cover like first chapters, like we'll go like right through, like I'll actually help you write your first sentences and just craft a awesome first chapter in like 30 minutes to an hour. Or we could cover like character creation, world building, the story scope, story mapping, really anything that you need help with, we can cover there. So again, just book a call, the link's down below. It's a Calendly thing, just choose whichever time works for you when it's available, and I'll see you in the next video.